As the scene unfolded inside the Adventurers Guild, Guildmaster Matilda spoke to Oren Johngold and offered an apology. She explained that, starting today, they were asking him to leave the guild, describing it as a painful decision made for everyone's safety, and asked whether he understood. Hearing this, Oren shouted in protest, questioning which part of him was not good enough. He insisted that whenever there was a fight, he was always the first one charging forward and giving everything he had. He questioned whether he truly was not good enough, and in desperation begged Mr. Matsuruta, saying that if something was wrong, he would fix it, asking only to be allowed to stay and pleading for mercy. Suddenly, Mr. Matsuruta spoke up, pointing out Oren's accent. He acknowledged Oren's talent as a mage, but stated that they had absolutely no idea what he was saying. He continued by explaining that in a party where teamwork is essential, being unable to communicate smoothly is fatal. He added that even though Oren was already mid-career, they could not trust him to act as a party leader. Mr. Matsuruta then apologized, stating that there was no place for Oren's skills here, said that was all he wanted to convey, and thanked him for his 5 years of service. Nearby, a girl watched the scene and wondered why someone as brilliant as Matilda would be exiled so unilaterally. Seeing Oren looking awful, she worried about whether he was okay. Suddenly, she noticed him holding a rope and urgently asked him to stop, insisting that he could not do something like that. Almost immediately, someone shouted that the subjugation squad had returned, and another boy called out to Regina, asking her to prepare the usual tea for 20 people. Later, Oren muttered to himself that he had known it all along, that a country bumpkin like him would only be mocked in a big city. He questioned what he was supposed to do, thinking that he had truly tried his best. Seeing him like that, a man asked what was wrong with him, noting that he had been muttering to himself for a while another man wondered what language he was even speaking. Unexpectedly, Regina shouted Oren Senpei's name and suddenly hugged him, stating that just because he had been banished from the guild, she did not want him doing anything reckless. She added that it would leave a terrible taste in her mouth if he were to throw himself off a cliff. As he pushed her away, Oren told her not to jump to conclusions and kill him off like that. He then immediately asked who she even was. In response, Regina introduced herself and explained that she was a rookie adventurer from the same guild. She added that she had even served tea at his desk every day. Hearing this, Oren wondered aloud whether there really had been someone like that and apologized, saying he did not remember her. Before he could finish, however, he asked whether she could understand what he was saying. After hearing his question, Regina nodded and explained that her skill was called Interpreter. She described it as a special ability that awakens through a ritual at the age of 15, something that could be called a talent, and noted that almost everyone lives by making use of their own unique skill. Listening carefully, Oren remarked that interpreters sounded like such a bizarre ability and questioned what use something like that could have in a party. In response, Regina said that she did not really know much about the interpreter's skill itself, and added that she belonged to the East Wind Party as a healer. So Oren asserted that at least it was better than being a banished mage. Regina immediately challenged that idea, asking whether he truly agreed with being banished. She urged him that instead of drowning in his sorrows there, he should go and negotiate directly with Matilda. Oren snapped at her to leave him alone, saying he was not going to change the way he did things. Hearing that, Regina questioned why he had to be so stubborn, then suddenly declared that if he was going to be like that, she would dig her heels in as well. She boldly announced that from now on, the two of them would form an adventure party together. Oren asked what good it would do for a rookie like her to team up with a hick like him. Regina responded that there were quests he could take even without belonging to a guild, and asked him to reconsider. She then questioned whether that was not far better than shamelessly crawling back to the countryside just because he had been fired from the guild. Oren told her not to speak as if she knew everything about him. Just as he was about to continue, someone cut him off, saying that Oren was bringing the whole mood down and that he would put everything on Oren's tab, telling him to just leave for the night. As Oren walked away, he apologized for causing trouble, said he was simply heading home, and asked to be forgiven. Regina also apologized and ran after him, asking where he was going. Oren replied that he was going back to the countryside. Refusing to let him go, Regina asked him to calm down, saying she was sure Metal de San had some kind of plan in mind, and begged him to reconsider. Instead, Oren growled at her, calling her incredibly annoying. He continued that just because she could understand his language did not mean she understood how he felt, and told her to leave him alone. Suddenly, Regina threw a stone at his head. Feeling the pain, Oren angrily demanded to know what she was doing. Regina retorted that she did not understand him at all, and said she did not want to understand someone who would run back to the countryside after failing just once. She went on to explain that her own skill had been relentlessly mocked until now, but even so, she had never given up on her dream. She said that despite lacking aptitude, she believed she could still become a healer, worked hard with that belief, and eventually made it into the guild. She then asked whether Oren Senpai did not also have a dream he wanted to fulfill in the royal capital. Oren asked whether she even knew anything about his hometown. Regina denied knowing it. Oren then explained that his hometown was called Aomori, adding that he doubted she had ever heard of it. He described it as lying at the farthest eastern and northern edge of the continent, the most remote frontier. He continued by saying that there were no guilds or adventure parties there, no magic video devices, no magic audio devices, and no magic self-driving cars. He stated that Aomori had none of the things the royal capital possessed, but because of that, it was peaceful. He described the air and scenery as beautiful, said the apples were delicious above all else, and even mentioned that there were dragons on Mount Hakoda. Oren then said that it reminded him of his childhood, when he used to catch baby dragons. Regina did not believe him, asserting that he kept casually talking about dragons. Oren replied that she probably could not even imagine it, to which Regina responded that that was not really the level of conversation she meant. Oren continued, saying that he came from a place called Suguru. He explained that his parents were apple farmers, that there were no rich people in the village, and that his family was especially poor. Even so, he said his parents raised him without ever letting him feel deprived. He added that when they discovered he had the mage skill, they even went into debt just to send him to the royal capital. Furthermore, Oren stated that he loved his parents and his hometown deeply, and because of that, his dream was to someday build an adventurers guild in Aomori and revive the village. Regina reacted by saying that building a guild out in the sticks would be difficult, and that even in the capital it was no easy task. Oren responded that Aomori was so remote that there was no work available even after people turned 15. Because of that, all the young people abandoned their hometown and headed to the city to make a living. He continued that without young people, Aomori kept slowly withering away, and that seeing it happen broke his heart. Oren explained that he believed if he became famous in the big city, people who wanted to be adventurers would gather around him. He thought that if he could create jobs back home, the young people and his friends would return, and Aomori would thrive again. He then questioned how he was supposed to apologize to everyone, saying that the entire village had sent him off with hope, yet he had been kicked out of the guild just because of his Aomori accent, something he could never tell them. While crying, Oren blamed himself and asked his mother and father to forgive their worthless son. Watching him, Regina realized that she had been wrong. She thought that his accent was his pride, and that it was not that he could not fix it, but that he would not. She reflected that it had ended up destroying his future, and she apologized to him. Suddenly, a voice called out, asking if that was not Oren. Hearing this, Regina asked why the man was there. The man remarked that Oren even had Regina, the tea fetcher, with him. He was Valen Duval, an S-rank magic swordsman who served on the guild's front lines, a true veteran who had survived countless brushes with death thanks to his genius swordsmanship and overwhelming magical power. However, he was also arrogant about his abilities, a cruel man who looked down on his comrades and did not hesitate to use them as shields. Regina apologized to him and said that she was a little busy at the moment. Angered by her response, Valen demanded to know what was wrong with her and questioned since when she was allowed to talk back to an S-rank adventurer. He added that she was nothing more than a lowly, unranked tea server. Valen then remarked that he had heard Oren had been kicked out of the guild, and that it was because no one could understand what he was saying. He mocked him, saying that he was probably the only man in the world who would get fired for such a reason. Hearing this, Oren glared at him. Seeing that look, Valen placed his foot beside Oren's head and asked what that expression was supposed to mean. He continued by saying that he was just trying to comfort him, since Oren would be slinking back to the boonies with his tail between his legs anyway. Valen laughed and claimed that being laughed at gratefully was the only job small fry like him were good for as a parting gift. Listening to this, Regina shouted at Valen to stop, saying that he had too much to drink and had gone too far. Valen questioned her glare, asking whether she was trying to pick a fight with him. He then added that come to think of it, her skill as a fetcher was trash as well. He asked whether it was called interpreter or something, saying he could not believe she had the nerve to knock on the doors of a prestigious guild with such a useless skill. He then questioned whether she was sticking around Oren or if she had been exiled too. Valen went on to say that a trash skill was a perfect match for a country bumpkin like Oren. He mocked her by asking why she did not follow him back to his horse manure-covered shack and play house together, adding that if she popped out a child or two, she might find some happiness. At that moment, Regina stuck out her tongue at him. Seeing this, Valen flew into a rage and slapped her. Holding her face, Regina cursed him. Hearing her words, Valen demanded to know what she had just said. Regina shouted back that she had indeed cursed him, stating that she had her own pride and did not deserve to be mocked by a scumbag like him. Valen roared, asking whether she wanted to die, and warned her not to lecture him. He insulted her, calling her a talentless piece of trash with no skills. Regina responded that she would keep working hard, stay stubborn, and do exactly what she wanted to do. She declared that she would become the person she wanted to be. She added that unlike a two-bit thug who only bragged about his talent, the world they saw and the things they thought about were completely different. She told him that if he understood even a little, he should get lost. After hearing her words, Valen stated that she had been running her mouth too much and swung his fist at her. However, the punch did not land, and both of them froze in shock. Unexpectedly, Oren stated that there was not a single person in Almori who would ever raise a hand against a cornrowed girl. Hearing this, Valen questioned whether Oren had put up a barrier and demanded to know when he had even chanted the spell. Growing even angrier, Valen declared that he would teach Oren exactly what happened when someone pissed him off. Just then, Regina shouted that fighting among guild members was strictly forbidden. Valen snarled at her to shut her mouth, warning that if she kept talking, he would start with her next. As Valen moved to draw his sword, Oren suddenly snatched it from his hand and remarked that it was not bad, saying that it would cut quite nicely. Seeing his sword in Oren's grasp, Valen froze in shock. Watching the scene unfold, Regina wondered what was happening. She recalled that activating magic normally required a fairly long chant, making instant deployment impossible. That was why mages usually stayed at the rear of the party, while other members fought on the front lines to buy time for the chant. Regina realized that Oren Senpai was supposed to be using magic, yet he had not chanted at all. That raised a troubling question in her mind about whether such a thing was even possible. She wondered if his heavy accent was actually the result of compressing his magical incantation to its absolute limit. She then questioned whether Matilda-san had seen through to Oren Senpai's true strength, and if that was the case, then what he was wielding was undoubtedly chantless magic. Moments later, Valen asked in shock whether Oren was joking and demanded to know what he planned to do. Stepping forward, Oren stated that Valen simply needed to apologize. He warned him to stay the hell away, saying that Valen had been the one to get rough first, and added that he should be prepared to be cut down if he continued. Hearing this, Valen immediately bowed and apologized, admitting that it was his fault and begging Oren to let him go. Oren responded that he should not apologize to him, but to Regina, and demanded that he swear never to do this again and beg for her forgiveness. With the sword pointed at him, Valen hurriedly apologized to Regina, promising that he would never repeat his actions and begging her to forgive him. Oren then asked Regina whether that was sufficient. Hesitantly she agreed, but added that she could not truly forgive him. Before she could continue, Oren asked whether he should punish Valen a little more. Shocked, Regina immediately refused, saying that it was enough and asking Oren to let him off the hook. However, she then raised another question, asking what that magic had been. Hearing this, Oren asked whether there was something strange about his magic and stated that it was just magic, saying it was only natural for a mage to use it. Regina shouted back that he had not chanted a single word, pointing out that only a handful of people in the entire world were capable of something like that. In that moment, Valen seized his chance and struggled back to his feet. Seeing him move, Oren asked whether he still had not learned his lesson. Valen suddenly howled that he would kill him and charged forward. Instantly, Oren deployed a barrier while continuously chanting, causing Valen's sword to shatter and leaving him injured, blood spilling from his head. Valen then demanded to know who Oren really was. Oren replied coldly that he was disappointed, explaining that if Valen had simply gone home quietly, he would have pretended not to see anything. But now, he said, he could not forgive him anymore. Oren continued by stating that he had been willing to let Valen off the hook if he had left silently right then and there, but that chance was gone. After that, Oren cursed him. Valen shouted that he had no idea what Oren was babbling about and claimed that something like this was not enough to stop him. Standing there, Regina realized that Oren was no longer speaking to Valen at all. The words he spoke flowed like an incantation, describing how water passes in an instant, how time stretches from the ancient past to the distant future, and how it settles into peace, becoming a fragment that demonstrates power. She recognized it as a great spell known to all who wield the arcane arts, a fragment of immense wisdom that leads those who seek its name into despair, a forbidden dark magic. Seeing everything unfold, Regina asked whether Oren Senpai was truly planning to kill Valen and immediately begged him to stop, insisting that he could not take a life. She went on to say that if he used magic meant to save people in order to kill someone, it would taint his talent, and she pleaded with him to spare Valen's life. At that, Oren stated that with his sword broken and his confidence shattered, Valen would no longer be able to continue as an adventurer. Hearing this, Regina was stunned, thinking that it was incredible that he had actually defeated an S-rank adventurer. She then asked how Oren Senpai was able to use forbidden magic, saying that it was grand magic, the highest form of wisdom. Oren, however, questioned what she was talking about and explained that it was simply magic used for harvesting apples. He added that back in Aomori, even the old grandfathers around the neighborhood could use that magic, so it was only natural for him to borrow a hand to hold Valen down. Oren continued by saying that it would be really nice if everyone back in Aomori, including all his friends, could see those stars as well, noting that the people from Aomori were all stubborn as mules. He then wondered whether he could become one too, a mage who sparkled just like the stars in the sky. He said that he only needed to stay stubborn a little longer, keep pushing forward, and keep shining brightly. With that resolve, he declared that he would continue being an adventurer until he became the star of Aomori. Hearing this, Regina excitedly said that starting from tomorrow, they would be making a fresh start together, and that she was looking forward to working with him. In response, Oren said that he was counting on her as well. As they shook hands, Oren asked whether her name was Lazuna, only for Regina to immediately correct him, saying that she had already told him her name was Regina. As Oren started walking away, he shouted that starting tomorrow, they would earn some funds by taking on a quest, and that they would be hunting down a huge monster. Running after him, Regina replied that there were not always big quests conveniently waiting for them. Meanwhile, elsewhere, someone shouted for help, complaining that this was not what they had been told at all. In the next scene, Regina reflected on how she had quit that prestigious guild in the heat of the moment. She also thought about how this was the first time in her life that she had actually entered a man's room, which made her even more conscious of the situation. Eventually, Oren entered the room while apologizing for the wait and mentioning that the food was ready. As Regina stared at the food, she began thinking that once she finished eating she would, yet before she could complete that thought, Oren suddenly grabbed her. He remarked that she could not simply barge into a man's room and leave for free. Hearing his words, Regina was instantly shocked and thought that this situation had suddenly turned very bad. However, while serving her food, Oren explained that they should have a strategy meeting over the meal and added that if they did not hurry, she would get home late. Hearing this, Regina became confused. Oren then questioned whether she had not mentioned that her parents' house was in the capital. After that, Regina immediately agreed while eating, and she reflected on how rude and mistaken her assumption had been. It was also noted that she had a tendency to let her delusions run wild. Later on, Regina suddenly shouted, causing Oren to immediately react while looking somewhat pale, asking if she was feeling sick or unwell. Regina quickly denied it, and instead commented that this was exactly what one would expect from Guild Street, pointing out how crowded it was with people. Oren responded by agreeing, stating that there was no other place in the entire capital as lively as this. In response, Regina explained that they planned to form a party and eventually create a guild, but before that, they needed to raise funds. Hearing her words, Oren agreed and explained that they would need money to rent an office, money to hire members, and that even a rough estimate placed the cost at around 3 Lake Dalico. Shocked, Regina replied that it was a small fortune. Oren then added that earning that amount in one go would not be easy. Regina responded that they would have to start small and take on many jobs. She continued by stating that in any case, the clan was the first priority, which was why they had come to Guild Street in the first place. Agreeing with her, Oren suggested that they should get going for now and at least show their faces, also mentioning that if he remembered correctly, that route served as a shortcut to the clan. Eventually, Regina thought that it was a bit late to ask, but wondered whether Oren's accent would be fine. It was then explained that the clan was an organization that arranged jobs for adventurers and parties while transcending guild boundaries. Since there were very few completely solo jobs, the clan often helped freelance adventurers form temporary parties. Regina then wondered whether they would actually be given a decent quest, but concluded that this was exactly why she was here and that she would do her best. All of a sudden, 2 fully armed men appeared and collapsed onto the ground. Seeing them, someone shouted for the guards to be called. Oren quickly urged Regina to move. While she was helping them, one of the injured men asked who she was. Regina responded by explaining that she was a healer and asked him to allow her to treat his wounds. As she tore open his shirt, Regina noticed that the bleeding had not stopped at all and realized that they needed to heal him immediately. However, when she saw the wound clearly, she was shocked. She thought about how deep the claw marks were and wondered just how massive the beast must have been to cause such damage. She also realized that it was a miracle the wound had not been fatal. Just then, Oren questioned whether she was a healer and whether she could fix such wounds. Regina responded that she did not know, but emphasized that it was dangerous to leave him like this and that they had to act quickly. She then began panicking internally, thinking that injuries of this severity were usually treated by doctors and that healing magic was not all-powerful. She also realized that she had never healed a wound this severe before. Regina questioned whether a rookie like her could really heal him, and feared what would happen if she failed. In the meantime, Oren urged her not to panic and swore that she would make it, reassuring her that he was right there with her. Hearing this, Regina reflected that she was already one of her senpai's party members and an adventurer herself. Gathering her resolve, she used her power, and it worked. Regina then stated that she had managed to stop the bleeding and that the rest could be handled by a doctor. After that, Oren remarked that it looked like she was done and praised her for it. However, someone suddenly called out for the healer again, saying that they needed her elsewhere. Regina found herself unable to move. Seeing this, Oren asked what was wrong. Regina explained that she had used too much mana at the start, and that the wound had been deeper than she expected. Worried, Oren stopped her and warned her not to move or she would damage her body. Regina insisted that she could not worry about that right now and that she had to hold out until the guards arrived. Even then, Oren asked whether she had the interpretation skill and instructed her to interpret the healing spell chant for him. Hearing this, Regina was shocked and asked if he meant casting the spell using an Almore accent. Oren agreed and explained that although he could not use healing magic himself, he could interpret the healing spell chant. He added that it was possible he might even be able to use it, and while it was a desperate measure, it was all they had. Regina then thought that this made sense. Since her senpai could use forbidden dark magic, he definitely possessed more magical power than she did. She reasoned that if she reverse-interpreted the incantation using her interpretation skill, she should be able to use recovery magic even better than before. Eventually, Oren called out to her and stated that she was the only one who could do this, urging her to give it everything she had. Furthermore, while holding his shoulder, Oren began chanting, calling forth a healing wind enriched by the land and river stretching 10,000 miles, commanding through devotion that countless wounds be healed. After that, Regina became scared and wondered if she had made a mistake. At that moment, the injured man questioned what had happened to him. Regina responded that it had worked and that the wound had closed up. Suddenly, she questioned what was happening, as even if Oren's magical power was off the charts, she could not believe that healing magic had closed the wound so perfectly. However, while wiping sweat from his face, Oren admitted that he did not really understand it either, but said that it was a good thing nonetheless. Before Regina could say anything further, the man asked whether the healer and the older brother figure were the ones who had healed them, and expressed his gratitude toward them. Oren responded that no gratitude was necessary and instead asked what had happened to him. At the same time, Regina also stated that thanks were unnecessary and questioned what on earth had occurred. Suddenly, the man hurriedly explained that a giant Fenrir was heading toward the royal capital. He warned that evacuation had to begin immediately or everyone would be finished. Hearing this, both Regina and Oren asked where this Fenrir was. The man responded that it was in a village north of their location and that it had recently begun prowling near the capital. He also mentioned that it carried a massive bounty. Listening to this, Regina commented that it was strange, as they had never had a magical beast like that approach the royal capital before. Oren agreed, stating that it was certainly a peculiar story. Moreover, Regina reflected that the wound earlier had been far too large to be caused by a Fenrir's claw marks, and she questioned herself about the strange feeling she was experiencing. Instantly, Oren asked whether the Fenrir he mentioned was a wanted beast. The man confirmed this and showed them a poster, explaining that the Fenrir, known as the White Wolf, was an exceptionally valuable target rarely seen near the capital. He added that the bounty on its head was 3.8 million dalico. After hearing this, Oren stated that their very first job had been decided. Regina agreed and added that if they could obtain that reward money, all of their problems would be solved. In the next scene, Oren asserted that they were going to slay that Mandarako with their current gear. Hearing this, the injured man shouted in disbelief, questioning whether Oren had listened to a single word he had said, or if they had a death wish. Placing a hand on the man's shoulder, Oren told him to leave the rest to them and to get some rest, saying that his eyes were filled with nothing but hope now. However, the man responded that it was useless. Regina then stated that if it was already decided, they should get going right away. Oren agreed and said they were going to do it the rough way. He added that he would teleport them straight to Fenrir. The moment they vanished, the man muttered in fear that they were gone. As soon as they arrived, Regina mentioned that she felt sick. Oren responded that it was just space sickness and told her to stand up straight and take a deep breath, assuring her that she would feel better in no time. Hearing this, Regina thought that if anything had gone wrong, their bodies could have been torn apart. She also wondered how he could cast such high-level transportation magic so casually and asked whether that was normal in Aomori. Oren casually replied that it was just a magic spell used for chasing cows. He continued by explaining that chasing cows was a huge pain, especially compared to the livestock farmers in Hakoda, so it was nothing special. Turning her back, Regina thought that it was typical Aomori behavior, or Aomori for short. Cutting off her thoughts, Oren told her to forget that and look ahead, pointing out how awful the scene was, with not a single soul left and no trace of the once bustling outpost. Eventually, Regina remarked that even veteran adventurers were supposed to be stationed there, but she guessed it had been too much for them to handle. Suddenly, they heard a roar. Regina questioned whether that was Fenrir's roar, and the two of them began following the sound. As soon as they arrived, Regina commented on how awful it was, while Oren warned her not to look away, saying that it was coming. At that moment, a massive Fenrir appeared before them. Frozen in fear, Regina thought that this was bad. It was a Fenrir, and its power was completely off the charts. She realized that a human would be torn to shreds in an instant. She urged Oren to run, thinking that even for him this was impossible. She reasoned that although 3 million Dalico was tempting, their lives were far more important and that they needed to hurry. However, when Oren did not move at all, Regina became even more frightened. Suddenly, Oren spoke in shock upon noticing a scar. He shouted that he remembered him, calling out that it was Oren from Suguru village and that he used to ride on his back when they played, asking if he really did not recognize him. Instead of responding, Fenrir prepared to attack Oren. At that moment, Regina pushed him away and questioned what he meant. Oren murmured to himself, wondering why something like this had to happen. Hearing this, Regina asked whether he knew that Fenrir. Oren then explained that Fenrir, named Ur, had been his friend back in Aomori. He said that Ur had been famous around Ajigasawa port in Aomori for being huge, yet incredibly gentle. Everyone loved him, and he had never hurt anyone or even barked at people. Oren then questioned why Ur was in the royal capital and why someone would do something like this to him. Moreover, Oren continued that he did not know what kind of reason Ur had, but that he would stop him regardless. He apologized to Regina, saying that he did not want to drag her into this. As Regina watched him walk forward, she thought that after finally seeing each other again, she could not believe it had to end this way. Standing in front of Fenrir, Oren stated that he did not know what karma had brought them together like this, but if Ur continued rampaging, he would have no choice but to strike him down. At that moment, Wazo lunged forward, and the battle began. After Oren injured him, Regina remarked that he was overwhelming even that ferocious Fenrir. She then questioned herself about what kind of absurdly overpowered person she had ended up forming a party with. Oren then asked whether she was hurt. Regina replied that she was fine, but immediately asked about him instead. Unexpectedly, they saw Fenrir getting back up, and the sight left both of them in disbelief. Oren angrily declared that even after all that, he still would not stay down, and warned him not to dare touch him anymore. Regina then thought that if this continued, she would have to take down Wazo for real. However, to Oren, Wazo was a close friend from back home, and he clearly did not want to fight him. Suddenly, Regina heard a voice commanding the great beast to rise, stating that it was not over yet and ordering it to kill the human and soar to the ends of the earth. Hearing this, she was shocked. The voice continued, proclaiming that it would be known throughout the land, and that a bloody atonement would be brought upon humanity as the ultimate punishment. Confused, Regina questioned whether this was Wazo speaking. However, it did not sound like his own voice. Instead, it felt as though someone else was forcing him to say it. Realizing this, she immediately told Oren to wait. Oren asked what was wrong, and Regina explained that she had heard Wazo's voice, and that there was a possibility he was being controlled by someone. Hearing this, Oren was shocked and asked if she was certain. Regina replied that it was very likely, and added that this would also explain why Wazo did not recognize him. After listening to her, Oren admitted that it actually made sense, and said that Wazo would never do something like this on his own. He concluded that they had to do something about the situation. Oren then growled that he did not know who the culprit was, but that he would never forgive the piece of trash forcing Wazov to act like this. Regina then pointed out that Oren's magical power was surging. Oren told her to stay back, warning that in his current state, he could not guarantee that she would not get caught in the crossfire. After that, Wazov prepared to strike, but Oren leaped up and landed on his head, activating forced sedation. In an instant, Wazov collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Seeing this, Regina asked whether he had defeated him. Oren explained that he had simply put him to sleep, and that he would not be waking up for a while. Oren then began searching Wazov's body. Seeing this, Regina shouted in alarm, thinking he might wake him up. However, Oren suddenly found something and told her to look. While examining it, he explained that it was a mark, a trace left by the curse placed by the caster. He added that if Wazov had been controlled, there was bound to be a mark somewhere, and this distorted mark was the proof. Regina then asked whether Wazov had grown so huge and gone on a rampage because of this curse. Oren replied that now that they knew the cause, they could get rid of it. He then broke Wazov's curse using his own power. As he stepped back, Oren told her not to worry anymore, explaining that Wazov should return to normal now. Hearing this, Regina thanked him and reflected on how disastrous it would have been if Wazov had continued heading toward the capital. Suddenly, Regina noticed Oren freeze in place and asked if something was wrong. Oren exclaimed that something ridiculously powerful had just appeared. He then asked whether she recognized the crest they had just seen. Regina replied that she did not particularly recall seeing it and asked if he knew what it was. Oren then explained that the emblem was the crest of Kaio, the crest of the northern royal family, the Grand Duke Sunder's house. He added that the 2 standing guards of the northern lands bearing that crest were far too strong to break through. In the next scene, Oren explained that the Tohaku region was home to Penny Land, the largest city on the Oyashima continent, located far from the royal capital, Oedo. He clarified that the ones ruling this land were not the Oyashima royal family, but a great noble clan known as the Northern Royalty House Sunda. He went on to say that, after being defeated by the current royal family in a struggle for supremacy long ago, they were sealed away in the northeast, far from the capital. However, through fertile lands and control over maritime trade, they had steadily amassed power, suppressing even the crown, becoming an arrogant giant that now maintained a state of semi-independence. He further mentioned that the strength of the Golden Eagle Army, the Grand Duke's personal force, led by his 2 twin pillars, the administrator and the general, was renowned even in the royal capital. According to rumors, they were constantly watching for an opportunity to seize hegemony over the continent. He added that if any turmoil were to break out in the royal capital, their name would be the first to surface as the mastermind behind it. After hearing this, Regina asked whether that meant the one who cursed Wazov was involved. Oren responded that he could not say for sure yet whether it was truly the work of the Zunda clan, or if someone else was using their name to pull such a stunt, but either way, he could not simply ignore it. After that, Oren minimized Wazov, and when Regina saw him, she was overwhelmed by how fluffy he looked and wondered what on earth Oren had done. Oren explained that he had made him smaller, since he could not exactly take Wazov out for a walk looking like that. At that moment, Regina excitedly exclaimed that she had never even heard of magic that could shrink living beings. Oren explained calmly that it was nothing difficult, as he had simply forced a volume conversion formula into spatial magic, and that anyone could do it as long as they understood the logic. Hearing him explain it so casually, Regina pointed out that it usually took over 10 years just to master spatial magic, yet he was combining it to create an entirely new spell. When Wazov finally woke up, Oren remarked that he was awake at last. Wazov began sniffing around, and as soon as he recognized Oren, he jumped onto him. He then started licking Oren's face happily, prompting Oren to ask whether Wazov remembered what he had told him. In response, Wazov barked. Watching this exchange, Regina suggested that they try asking him directly, then interpreted that Wazov was saying Oren had grown up healthy and strong. Hearing this, Oren happily exclaimed that he had been doing great too, and was relieved that Wazov had not forgotten him, as it had scared him quite a bit. Meanwhile, Regina proudly wondered to herself that even the dog had an Almore accent. Oren then asked whether, with her interpretation, they could get the full story from Wazov. Regina replied that she had expected this, but admitted that talking to cats and dogs was a little embarrassing. She asked Oren not to laugh, and as she spoke to Wazov, she thought about how unbelievable it felt to be doing this while people were watching. Seeing the scene unfold, Oren could only think about how absurd the situation was. After finishing, Regina explained that Wazov said he did not remember anything from before coming to the royal capital. However, he mentioned that right after meeting a human with an unfamiliar and suspicious scent in Aomori, his memory had gone completely blank. She added that Wazo believed that human was likely the cause. Hearing this, Oren stated that it meant the curse from earlier was real, and that they definitely could not leave this matter alone. Oren then added that Kuyo Crest, who had been affected by the same incident as Wazo, had also never encountered anyone with such a suspicious scent before. He admitted that he had a very bad feeling about it, as something strange was clearly happening in Aomori. He continued that it would be best to chase them down and head north, remarking that he could not believe his first trip home in 5 years had turned into something so suspicious. Hearing this, Regina said that if that was the case, they should hurry, because setting Aomori aside, if Archduke Zunda truly was the mastermind, then the peace of the entire kingdom would be at risk. After listening to her words, Oren questioned whether she was seriously planning to come along. In response, she asked if that was not obvious. Before he could say anything else, she exclaimed that Senpai complained far too much about every little thing. She went on to say that the two of them were already party partners and buddies, bound together by fate, and that leaving such a big score to someone else would not be any fun at all. Oren remarked that she was one hell of a stubborn mule, just like a woman from Aomori. He then said that it was settled and there was no point sticking around any longer. Once they got that bounty money, they would head straight north. At that moment, Regina conveyed Wazo's words, explaining that he was saying they should not leave him behind and that he wanted to be in this together with them. While embracing Wazo, Oren stated that they had to get him back to Ajigasawa port anyway, so it could not be helped and he would come along too. Regina then held out her hand and said it was nice to meet him, introducing herself as Regina Miles, a rookie adventurer. Unexpectedly, Wazo bit her hand and told her not to touch him like they were buddies. He barked that he did not recall ever becoming friends with someone like her, and warned the brainless little one not to touch him again, or he would not let her off easily. While patting Wazo's head, Oren nervously said that this was how they would eventually get used to her, so they should just get going. Watching Wazo walk away, Regina wondered why it felt like he was looking down on her so hard. Oren then told her to cheer up, reminding her that they had 3 million Dalico waiting for them. Later, at the adventurers' clan, Oren shouted in frustration, questioning why he was not getting paid even though he had definitely taken down the white wolf. Pointing toward Wazo, he insisted that this right here was the white wolf, and that anyone with half a brain could tell just by looking at him. Regina noted that Oren had been repeating this for a while, but the man responded in denial, saying that no matter how he looked at it, bringing a little dog like that and claiming it was the white wolf he had slain was going too far. He added that no one would believe him without proof. Hearing this, Oren shouted that this was exactly why he had brought back living proof, explaining that his name was Wazo and that he had been controlled by someone. Watching the exchange, Regina thought to herself that this back and forth had already been going on for over 10 minutes. She then said that it was enough, admitting that even she would not have believed it if she had not been involved herself. Hearing her say that, Oren growled in disbelief, questioning what she was saying when she had seen it too, and when his magic blues had already been put away. The man then explained that even if the dog really was the white wolf, the wanted posture clearly stated that subjugation was required. He continued that they would not get the bounty anyway, since Oren had already been paid 2 million Dalico by another guild as a reward for helping rescue those two adventurers. He told them to leave it at that, adding that he knew things were tough since Oren had just gone independent, but as an adventurer, he had to do things by the book. Furthermore, the man questioned why, even if Oren's story was true, he had brought Fenrir back alive instead of finishing him off on the spot. Hearing this, Oren became furious and exclaimed that Wazo was his friend, telling him not to talk about him, like he was some kind of tuna. He warned that if the man kept making fun of him, he would zap him with his stun gun. Before he could finish, Regina pulled him away and told him it was nothing, asking him to come over there for a second. She then told him to calm down, pointing out that no matter how he looked at it, their argument was unreasonable, and that to outsiders, they probably looked like thugs shaking down a clan. Hearing this, Oren admitted that she was right and then asked if she knew where the nearest cow shed was. Regina responded in confusion, saying she did not, and asked what that had to do with anything. Unexpectedly, Oren said in a dangerous tone that the two of them were going to find a cow shed, load a wagon high with cow manure, and ram it straight into this clan. Hearing that, Regina shouted that he had not learned his lesson at all, and warned that if he did not calm down immediately, she would bury him herself. Oren replied that being buried in that would be too much no matter how she looked at it, but added that if cow dung would not work, he would find a stable and get some horse manure instead. Losing her temper, Regina told him to get away from there, then calmed herself and said that he had protested enough. She concluded that it was a shame about the 3 million dalico, but they would just have to grind through quests bit by bit. But instead of listening, Oren began throwing a tantrum, stubbornly refusing to cooperate. He insisted that since he was not getting his money, he was not doing anything, and declared that he would dig his heels in and stay right there throwing a fit until he dropped dead. Regina said he had to be kidding her, pointing out that everyone was watching and questioning how someone representing Almori could be so pathetic. Oren shouted back that once an Almori man dug his heels in, he would never let up, and that he would show those royal capital folk what that meant. Just then, the man snapped at them that they were still there and complained that Oren had been noisy for ages. Oren howled back that who cared, adding that a measly 2 million dalico was pocket change and would disappear in an instant, just covering travel expenses in Pennyland. Suddenly, the man told them to wait a second and asked if they had just said Pennyland. He questioned whether they were seriously planning to go all the way to the Tohaku region, then remarked that Oren should have said so earlier, because he had a job and could set him up immediately. Hearing this, Regina asked if there was a quest up north. The man replied that it looked like they were in a real bind, and explained that flyers like these were being scattered all over the country, with this one having arrived fresh that very day. Showing them the poster, he added that no adventurers in the royal capital had taken it yet, making this their chance. The moment they saw the reward amount, both of them were stunned. The poster explained that it was a simple monster-slaying request in Pennyland, with a reward of 10 million dalico. Oren immediately shouted that they were taking the job and demanded that the 10 million reward had better not be a lie. He added that if the man was spouting nonsense, he would slice him up like sashimi from a hachino flying squid. Not understanding what Oren meant, the man called for someone to get a translator. Regina then asked whether the 10 million reward was really not a lie. The man replied that there was no way they would put out a wanted poster like that as a joke, and explained that they would have to hear the full details directly from the client on site. While patting the man's head, Oren apologized for all the shouting and for causing a scene, remarking that a man with such a smooth bald head looked like he could be the chairman of the Tsuruta Club. Hearing that, the man became completely confused. After that, Oren told Regina that this settled their destination as Pennyland, declaring that they would hit the jackpot and build themselves an office in a prime Ginza location. Regina responded that it sounded great, adding that prime real estate in Ginza meant a truly stubborn mansion. Still, Regina quietly thought that 10 million dalico was an incredible amount, and wondered who on earth would make a request like this. It was a high-paying job from the north, coming right after Wazo's curse had been lifted, and it all felt just a little too convenient. Suddenly, Oren called out to her as they started leaving ahead, but Regina thought that maybe she could make it work with people like this. Besides, if they were heading north, that meant Wino, which meant pandas, fluffy, round pandas, and she found herself unable to wait. In the next scene, Oren remarked that Regina seemed to be in an unusually good mood. Regina replied that it was only natural, since they were leaving the royal capital and heading all the way to the distant Zunda territory for 10 million dalico, and that she was finally living the life of an adventurer just as she had always dreamed. Oren agreed that she had a point, but noted that first they would have to pass through Wino to get onto Kingdom Route 4. Hearing the word Wino, Regina immediately became excited and exclaimed that they were really passing through Wino, which meant she would finally get to see a panda. She went on to excitedly explain that pandas apparently ate bamboo, were fluffy black and white creatures, like walking stuffed animals, and were unbelievably cute. Oren, however, said that something about pandas felt off to him, adding that those things were supposed to be pets and had nothing to do with being cute. Regina insisted that he was definitely thinking of some other monster, and that starting their journey with the legendary Fluffy Ball was the best possible beginning. She added that being a panda had been her dream ever since she was a little girl. Oren muttered that he hoped the rumors about her were true, while Regina happily declared that they should head to Yuino with high spirits because the pandas were waiting for them. As soon as they arrived, Regina noticed a barrier and asked what it was, wondering if Oren might have taken a wrong turn. Oren denied it and stated that they were already there, explaining that this was the Yuino Old Town District. Regina admitted that this was not at all what she had been expecting. Oren explained that the area she was thinking of was the new district, and that only nobles and major guilds were allowed to pass through there. He added that using the new road required lengthy screening, and if they wasted time like that, other guilds would beat them to the job. Oren then urged Regina to give it her all, since the pandas were supposedly waiting for them. As they walked, Regina commented on how quiet it was and brought up the barrier they had seen earlier, asking whether it was keeping something trapped inside the old city. Oren explained that according to rumors, the entire area had been abandoned 20 years ago due to a massive panda outbreak. Supposedly, the whole old city district had been sealed off along with the pandas, and it was now ruled by them. He added that the area was also known as the Demon's Lair, Yino Zoo. Regina reacted by saying that meant it was basically a panda paradise. Oren asked if she was still spouting that kind of nonsense, pointing out that they had been surrounded by buildings for a while now and that he could not tell which direction was which, something that never happened back in Almori. Regina admitted that he was right and suggested that if the area was sealed off, the maps were probably vague as well. Suddenly, she spotted someone and called out that there was a person over there. She added that the idea of leaving people to die was probably just an urban legend, so she would go ask for directions. She approached and politely explained that they were looking for the exit to Kingdom Route 4. In response, the panda she addressed slowly turned its head. The moment Oren saw it, he shouted for her to run, warning that it was a Yino panda and that if they got caught, it would eat them alive. Hearing this, Regina panicked and shouted that it was not cute at all. Oren yelled for her to run as they made a break for it. As they ran, Regina screamed that it was coming after them and asked if this was some kind of joke or mistake. Oren replied that the whole town had been locked down and that there was not supposed to be anything there except pandas. Regina desperately thought that this had to be a dream because there was no way a panda could be a monster. Then she spotted more pandas closing in and cried out that there were more of them. Oren shouted back for her to just run, insisting that those things were not walking stuffed animals, but living corpses. Meantime, Wazo barked, and Regina interpreted that he was saying he could smell people coming from over there, and that it was definitely the exit. Hearing this, they immediately started running toward it. As she ran, Regina thought that no matter how fast a panda might be, it should not be able to chase her beyond the barrier. She also thought that she could not afford to die before her adventure had even truly begun. However, she suddenly tripped and fell to the ground. Overcome with terror, she looked behind her and thought that she was about to be killed by the very creature she had admired ever since she was a child. Yet, just before anything could happen, the pandas suddenly stopped and began eating bamboo. Regina pointed out that people did say pandas ate bamboo, and Oren replied that it seemed the rumor had been true after all. Regina remarked that watching it quietly munch on bamboo like that was unexpectedly cute, but the very next moment she took it back, saying that it was absolutely not cute and that her image of pandas had been completely shattered. Hearing this, Oren commented that during their travels they might come across even cuter animals. Regina immediately snapped back to normal and declared that more importantly, 10 million Dalico were waiting for them, and that they should head onward to the Zunda territory. Later on, they first passed through the land of Dice Casca B and then entered the unexplored region of Gunma. Oren mentioned that it had already been half a month since they had left the royal capital. Before long, they finally spotted a town, and Regina said with relief that she could finally sleep in a proper bed. Oren admitted that he had thought the two of them were done for when they got lost in Gunma, even though they were supposed to be heading toward Zunda, or possibly Takagi. Suddenly, Regina shouted that they had only ended up taking such a long detour because Oren had taken a wrong turn, and she questioned how on earth both he and Wazo could still be so full of energy. Oren apologized to her for that, then said that looking at the feet of the goddess of creation statue ahead was their destiny, because that place was Pennyland. The next scene mentioned that Oren and the others had finally entered the Tohoku area before their quest. On the other hand, while eating, Regina remarked that it was delicious, saying that the gentle texture of the noodles and the refreshing broth were a perfect match, making it the best. Oren then explained that it was Shiroshi's famous yumen and asked whether she liked it. Regina immediately replied that she loved it and even said she loved Shiroshi, but she also complained that the moment they arrived, people tried to force sell them kokushi dolls, making her wonder what kind of crazy town that was. Oren responded that it did not look like any of the others were sticking around, so at least they were in luck. Suddenly, a man asked if they were adventurers. Regina agreed and said they were on their way to Pennyland, but the man urged them to take his advice and leave the town as soon as possible. After finishing their meal, Regina asked what was wrong with that shopkeeper. Oren replied that he did not know, but after what happened with Waso, they had better stay on their toes. Still, Regina thought that would not be easy, considering the road to 10 million Dalico. Unexpectedly, Oren shouted for her to look, pointing out that they were selling a Shigeru manju. He added that they were really sweet, unlike kokushi dolls, and perfect for a snack. Hearing this, Regina questioned whether he was supposed to be staying focused, and also pointed out that they would not even know if he ordered to. Just then, she suddenly heard a voice declaring that there would be a bloodbath of atonement for humans, the ultimate punishment, commanding it to howl, soar, and make itself known throughout the land. As soon as Regina understood what she was hearing, she grew confused and turned her head. She saw a huge creature and thought it was impossible, because that thing was only supposed to exist in fiction and fairy tales. A legendary magical beast whose arrival had been called a natural disaster since ancient times, the flying calamity. Suddenly, the beast began to draw in breath. Seeing this, Regina realized she had to run. However, Oren grabbed her and threw her over his shoulder, activating his super acceleration. While hiding behind a wall, he warned her not to stand there in a daze, saying she had been seconds away from being burned to a crisp. He then muttered that this was seriously bad and questioned why there was a dragon in a place like this. He added that even Lake Tawada did not have anything that huge, and that the creature was far beyond any normal scale. Regina then thought about the rumors of dragons in Aomori and realized they were true, but she also wondered why the people at the food stalls were not running away. She immediately concluded that the dragon was being controlled by someone, just like what had happened with Wazo. Oren remarked that he never expected even a world-class dragon to be manipulated so easily. He then said that it was too cramped to take it down properly, so he would have to try punching it right in the snout. Regina told him to wait and asked if he was seriously planning to fight a dragon. Oren replied that he could not just let the people around them get killed, told her to leave it to him, and instructed her to stay hidden where she was. Watching him fight the dragon, Regina realized that he was taking a dragon's attack head-on. Meanwhile, Oren commented that no matter how big it was, it could not be as big as the dragon of Lake Tawada, just as the dragon launched its attack. Later, Regina rushed toward him. This time, the dragon was about to strike her, but Oren saved her. He admitted that he had failed to keep his guard up in time and had let it down, then asked if she was hurt. Regina apologized, saying it was all her fault and that she would heal him right away. Oren told her to forget it, explaining that they did not have time for that. As he moved toward the dragon again, Oren taunted it, asking if it was licking its chops before its prey. He growled that it should not think it could kill its Suguru warrior just by wounding him, calling it a rotten little dragon. Watching this, Regina thought to herself that he was intimidating the dragon with nothing but his words. Unexpectedly, someone stepped forward and asked the mage if he was all right, saying that they would back him up. Hearing this, Oren asked whether they were adventurers. As soon as several of them gathered around, the dragon flew away. Watching it retreat, Oren remarked that it looked like it had been saved again and cheated death once more. Immediately after that, he collapsed. Everyone rushed toward him, anxiously asking if he was all right, warning that if he was not treated right away, he would be in real danger. Others asked whether there were no other recovery mages around, and another man shouted for someone to bring a stretcher. One of them cautioned Regina not to push herself too hard, saying that she would collapse as well if she kept going. Later in the room, Regina apologized to Oren, saying she had done something unnecessary. Oren told her not to worry about it, explaining that it was his own fault for letting his guard down because he thought it was only a Hakoda lesser dragon. Hearing that, Regina pointed out that letting one's guard down against a dragon was unthinkable. Oren then apologized instead, saying that he was the one who should be sorry for causing trouble, but also admitted that her healing magic had truly saved him. Regina asked what he was talking about, saying that as his partner, it was only natural for her to do so. She then added that the burns were extensive and not fully healed yet, and asked him to make sure he got absolute rest for a while. Just then, the mayor entered the room and asked how her companion was feeling. On behalf of the town, he expressed their gratitude once more and thanked Oren for coming to their aid. Oren immediately denied it, saying he had done nothing worth being thanked for. Regina conveyed that he was saying he had not done anything to deserve such gratitude. Oren then added that more importantly, there was something he wanted to ask. The mayor showed them a poster and mentioned that even the wording on the wanted poster was unusual. Oren recognized it as a monster subjugation request from the Archduke Zunder family and asked whether the target was that dragon. The mayor explained that the people of Zunda did not wish for the dragon to be slain, as they were looking for someone who could soothe its rage. He continued by saying that the dragon was a great being they worshipped as their guardian, the one-eyed dragon Lord Masamune. Hearing this, Regina pointed out that they had just been attacked by that dragon moments ago. The mayor explained that originally, Lord Masamune was a kind-hearted dragon who loved and protected humanity, and that it was only about a month ago that he had suddenly begun attacking them. He added that they still believed in Lord Masamune, that there must be a reason for his anger, and that all they could do was wait for it to calm down. Oren stated that this was the reason the people would not flee the town. The mayor replied that at this rate, it was only a matter of time before Pennyland was attacked. Under these circumstances, they would have to prepare themselves and send a formal subjugation request to Archduke Zunder. Regina reacted by asking if that meant the dragon. The mayor answered that it could not be helped, saying that this town was both their home and their coffin. Even if the opponent was the great Lord Masamune, he could not simply stand by and watch his hometown be destroyed. The mayor then said that they were free to use the room and asked Oren to rest there until his wounds had healed. After the mayor left, Oren asked how many days it would take to fix his arm. Regina immediately declared that if he intended to fight Masamune, she was coming with him. She said that even if a full recovery was not possible, she would continue treating him until he was at least fit to fight. The next morning, Regina woke up and scolded herself for falling asleep when she should not have, reminding herself that she needed to change his bandages. As soon as she removed the blanket, she saw the large folded blanket covering him. Filled with regret, she reflected that even though he was injured and had no connection or ties to that land, things had unfolded the way they did. Looking back, she thought it might have all been a series of coincidences, but for the first time, her skill as an interpreter, something no one had ever really needed before, had actually proven useful. She then realized it was because he needed her too. Suddenly, she burst out in frustration, thinking that if he was going to leave her behind, he should at least say something, and wondered what that potato-headed man even thought a partner was. Wiping away her tears, Regina resolved that she wanted to be the kind of person who stays by her senpai's side no matter what. She declared that he should just watch, because even a country bumpkin like her had things she could do. In the next scene, at the Zhou mountain range, Oren thought that Regina was probably really angry with him. Just as he heard her voice and turned around, he saw Regina walking toward him, demanding to know why he had left her behind. Startled, he asked what in the world she was wearing and why she was dressed like that in a place like this. Oren then concluded that the Fox Village's demons, the surrounding fog, and even Regina herself were all illusions conjured from his memories. Suddenly, she attacked him and questioned whether he really intended to take on that many opponents all by himself. Oren replied that he had been alone for 5 years before he met her, and that he could handle this on his own as well. She responded that there was no need for him to force himself to fight in his injured state, saying they should head back and request reinforcements from Pennyland. She added coldly that she did not care what happened to the people in the town in the meantime, since they were just strangers. At that, Oren shouted at her to shut up and told her to stop shouting with Regina's face. He challenged all the monster foxes to come at him at once, threatening that he would smash her mask and turn it into a fur coat. Unexpectedly, the real Regina appeared, completely exhausted, and asked whether the other one was really her. The moment she saw the imitation in front of her, she shouted that her chest was way bigger than that. Seeing this, Oren exclaimed that there was no doubt. This one was the real Regina. Regina then addressed the foxes, who stood in shock. She declared that they were going to break Masamune's curse and asked whether they had been driven from their homes by Masamune and were suffering as well. She pointed out that the person standing before them had fought Masamune alone and managed to drive him back, and she asked them to cooperate with them. Just then, one of the foxes asked whether the story about Lord Masamune being cursed was true. Wazo immediately confirmed that it was, explaining that Masamune had been controlled by someone, just as he himself had been. The fox replied that if Lord Wazo said so, then it could not be a lie. He added that Lord Masamune was like a father to them as well, and asked whether they were saying that these two would be the ones to save him. Regina immediately agreed and asked them to believe in them. As the foxes lined up, one of them offered his deepest apologies for his earlier rudeness and begged them to look after Lord Masamune. At that moment, they heard something, and Oren asked what was going on. Regina replied that the deal was done, as the foxes had entrusted Masamune to them. Regina then hugged Wazo, saying it had been a good follow and thanking him. Watching this, Oren reflected that if they had kept fighting, neither side would have walked away unscathed. He also realized that Regina had talked them down using nothing but words. Suddenly, Regina grabbed Oren's cheek and scolded him, calling him a bumbling, bird-brained, girl-crazy, good-for-nothing blockhead. She said she had already been exhausted and falling apart even before fighting Masamune, and that this was all his fault. She flicked his face and told him to listen, calling him an unemployed hillbilly and a selfish country bumpkin who thought he could act like a lone wolf, but that it was not going to be that easy. She added that there was no way he could look cool with a body beaten up like that, and asked if he even understood. Oren immediately apologized and asked her to forgive him. Regina then started crying, saying she had been terribly worried about him, and that she knew just how incredibly stubborn he was. Still, she declared that if he was going to be stubborn, then she would not lose to him either, because girls from the royal capital had been experts at putting on a brave face since the day they were born. She told him to listen carefully, saying that she was his partner and interpreter, and once a royal capital girl decided to follow someone, she would stick with them to the very end. That, she said, was the stylish spirit of a royal capital girl. Finally, Regina declared that she was his partner in destiny, and that if they were to fall and die, they would do so together. She swore that she would never let him be alone, that she did not care if she was a burden, and that she would cling to him wherever they went. She then asked whether he had any problem with that. After listening to all of her rambling, Oren remarked that she really was even more stubborn than he was, and that maybe she would not be able to handle being his partner if she could not speak her mind. Just then, Regina snapped back that this did not apply to their private lives and firmly told him to keep the bath and bed separate, just as always. Oren asked what she was even talking about. As he reached out his hand, he added that she had truly helped him back there, so they should properly take down Masamune together this time. He also admitted that he was glad to have her as his partner. Hearing that, Regina suddenly brightened and tightly grabbed his injured hand, saying that she was looking forward to working with him again. Oren immediately cried out in pain, saying that it hurt, and admitted that he had completely forgotten about his condition. With hands like that, he said, he could not even give her a proper handshake. Feeling awkward, Regina apologized and gently held his hand instead, saying that she would cast healing magic and asking him to give her his hand one more time. She warned him that this would be the last time and that it would be strictly first aid. She then added that if his condition worsened, a full recovery might not be possible, and in the worst case, he would have to be prepared to lose his arm. Oren said he understood, but Regina replied that knowing him, he would probably overdo it again anyway, so she handed him his gauntlets. Oren asked whether she had found them for him. Regina explained that it had been a real struggle, but she had fixed what she could and polished them, so they were as good as new. At that, Oren suddenly began to cry. Seeing this, Regina asked if it was really something worth crying over. Oren replied that those gauntlets were a precious treasure his mother and father had given him when he left Aomori. He added that she had saved him so many times with them, and thanked her, saying that he was truly grateful. Hearing this, Regina said that if his parents were watching over him, then they had nothing to worry about. She declared that they would win the fight against Masamune and take back the home of everyone in Pennyland. Oren agreed, saying that he definitely would not lose and could not afford to lose, then told them to follow him. When they arrived, Regina exclaimed that it was beautiful and asked what the place was. Oren explained that it was the sanctuary of the Zhao mountain range, known as the Witch's Cauldron. He warned her not to even think about swimming in it, explaining that it was a highly acidic volcanic lake where not only fish, but even insects could not survive. Regina then asked where Masamune was. Oren replied that with a body that large, there was no doubt Masamune had made the summit his nesting ground. Suddenly, they heard a voice, and Oren said it looked like Masamune had realized they were there. He then told Regina to take Wazo and hide. Regina grabbed Wazo and started running, saying that she believed in Oren and knew he would not lose. Oren replied that they were definitely going to win. As he moved forward, he reflected that he was no longer alone, thinking about his father, mother, Regina, and even Wazo being with him. When Oren finally saw Masamune, he remarked that they had met again. He said that he had let his guard down a little the last time, but that this time would be different. He vowed that he would make sure Masamune returned to normal no matter what, and added that if it came to it, he would scatter Masamune's remains and turn them into Tawada Bariaki. In the next scene, with cheers from his partner Regina behind him, Oren challenged the giant dragon once again. As the battle began, Oren chanted a high-tier multi-layer barrier. Watching the dragon, he remarked that it would be troublesome if it took to the sky, then shouted that it should not think it was the only one who could fly. Using his magic, Oren took flight as well and declared that they were now even. He then asked why the dragon looked so surprised, saying that it was nothing more than a simple reflection spell. As he chanted Water Mirror Blade, he taunted the dragon by asking whether it enjoyed playing in the water. The dragon responded by unleashing its fire breath, but Oren protected himself with a shield. As he held firm, he realized that the dragon had suddenly cranked up its output, and he had not expected it to still be hiding a trump card like that. Suddenly, Regina called out that they had a bigger problem and pointed to a statue the dragon had destroyed. Seeing this, Oren recalled the mayor's words about how the people still believed in Lord Masamune. Anger surged through him, and he shouted, questioning whether Masamune was not even frustrated. He continued, accusing him of nearly destroying everything he had protected, all because he had been controlled for a split second. Hearing Oren's words, Regina also found her courage and shouted that Masamune was suffering too, because he loved Penny Land. Together, they yelled that he should not dare lose to such a puny curse, and that if he was truly a dragon, he should show some pride. At that moment, Masamune began to growl. Oren asked what was happening, and Regina realized that Masamune was suffering and trying to resist the curse. She pointed out that the object on him was Masamune's eye patch. Oren recognized it as the same mark that had been on Wazo. Moving toward Masamune, Oren declared that he would set him free and began chanting a high-level rejection spell. As Oren attempted to remove the mark, declaring that he would settle it in one go, Regina watched from a distance and felt that things were turning bad as Oren was being pushed back. Just then Wazo barked, urging Oren not to lose and to give it his all. Regina told herself that they had to believe in him, because the Oren she knew would never lose to some dragon. She believed that the only one who could defeat Masamune now was Oren himself, and she shouted for her senpai to go for it. Suddenly, as Oren walked toward them and raised his thumb, he declared that he was the winner. In the next scene, Regina leaped over Oren and exclaimed in amazement, saying she could not believe he had actually defeated Masamune. She added that he was no longer just some country bumpkin, but a true hero who had saved Penny Land from the dragon. As Oren got up, he replied that half the credit belonged to her. Standing together before the unconscious dragon, Oren said that it was finally time to save Masamune. However, when they noticed the mark, both of them realized that the crest belonged to the Oyashima royal family. Oren pointed out that Wazo had once ravaged the royal capital while bearing the crest of House Zunda, and now Masamune had attacked Penny Land while bearing the royal family's crest. He concluded that whoever was behind this was trying to sow discord and incite a civil war. After saying this, he removed the curse from Masamune. Oren then stated that they were the only ones who knew about that crest and that they should keep it a secret from everyone else. When the dragon finally woke up, Wazo spoke to him, and Masamune realized aloud that he had been cursed. Hearing him speak shocked Regina, as she had not expected him to talk. Oren asked why she was so surprised, explaining that it was normal for dragons to speak. Masamune then stated that he was a descendant of the glorious dragon tribe. Regina immediately apologized, but Masamune denied it and said that he was the one who should apologize. He explained that it felt as though he had been trapped in a long nightmare, but even through the haze, the voices of Oren and Regina had reached him. He added that without their words, his feelings would never have been conveyed, and for that, he was deeply grateful. Regina then pushed Oren lightly and said that she had not really done anything, insisting that Masamune should thank Oren instead. Masamune praised Oren, saying that for a young mage to display such maneuvering against him had been truly magnificent. Oren responded awkwardly that he was making him blush, adding that back in Aomori, that sort of thing was normal. Hearing this, Masamune remarked that Oren was a human of Aomori. Masamune said that it was a name he had not heard in a long time, but that the brethren who dwelled in that land were all strong and beautiful. He wondered if that was why Oren had been able to defeat him. Looking at the statue nearby, Masamune swore an oath to protect the capital and watch over its people for all eternity, but admitted that he had failed to fulfill that promise. He said that he could not face his friend, the first King Zunder, who had defeated him when he was still a demon beast and had bestowed that eye patch upon his right eye. Oren remarked that it was shocking to think that the first king of Zunda had been a dragon slayer, but added that a man of such caliber would surely not blame Masamune. He stated that the true ones at fault were those who had cursed both Wazo and Masamune. Regina agreed and asked whether Masamune remembered the being who had placed the curse upon him.